It's week 4. You're trying to figure out who to put in your starting lineups this week. Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always, I've got Dave Kluge, and today we're going to give you guys our starts, our sits, our sleepers. We're going to run through these names, try to see if we can help you all out with your lineups for fantasy football. Dave, we've played with the format a little bit. I think we've settled on this now. We've got 3 starts, 1 player to sit, and 1 player that we can consider a sleeper or streamer, however you want to phrase that. Why don't you kick us off with your first player that you want to start this week?
Which I think this is the format we did last year. It just took us until week 4 to remember. Now we're getting in the swing of things.
We're
Now we
really
remember
in
how to do this.
mid-season form.
Yeah, we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants through the first few weeks, but here we are. Yeah, Justin Fields is my start this week. I've got him as my QB8 going up against Miami. We know who Justin Fields is. Like, he's going to have really good games and he's going to have really bad games. We saw him smash. He was the QB3 in week 1 playing against the New York Jets, and then had a very tough matchup against the Buffalo Bills where he was the QB35 before leaving with a concussion. Sounds like he is trending towards playing this week. Obviously, if he's not starting, you're not playing him, but if he is starting, I'm putting him in my lineup without thinking twice. Miami's given up the second most quarterbacks to any team so far this year besides Dallas. They've also given up the 5th most to running backs, which is important for a rushing quarterback like Justin Fields. I've got him as my QB8, so starting him ahead of Patrick Mahomes against Baltimore, starting him ahead of Bo Nix going up against Cincinnati, ahead of Jordan Love against Dallas. Of course, keep an eye on the injury report, make sure he's able to log some practices, so he'll be trending towards playing, but this is a smash spot for Justin Fields. I don't know if he's a weekly starter, in and out every single week, but in a matchup like this, if you've got Justin Fields, you got to get him in your lineup.
I think you may have said that the Miami Dolphins are giving up the second most quarterbacks, which either way I think is an accurate statement.
Second most
So,
points, 2 quarterbacks. Yep, coffee is still hitting.
Yeah, man. Listen, the Dolphins have always struggled, regardless of who the defensive coordinator been, the linebackers, the defensive line, the front 7, no matter what, they have always struggled with quarterbacks that can run the ball. And with this defense the way it is, I kind of think that any quarterback that is playing the Miami Dolphins that week should be considered a streamer, let alone the guy with the massive rushing upside. So yeah, I'm all in on that one.
And I think that's a pretty simple one, but I think a lot of people are going to see that week 2 performance and say like, "Oh, I can't start Justin Fields." That was a really tough performance, and then it doesn't get much easier than Miami. Sorry, Alfredo.
No, it's just, we're very self-aware of what we are. Did you notice that Miami they're wearing the rivalry uniforms for this one, the black uniforms that are like
I can't tell if I absolutely love them or absolutely despise them. Like sometimes I look at them and I'm like, this is an XFL team, and then other times I'm like, they're actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's when I first saw them, I absolutely hated them. I posted that I hated them. I in turn got a lot of hate for that. And then like now more and more people are coming out of the woodwork of like, yeah, these are kind of ugly jerseys. And the fans in South Florida are just like, we don't care about these jerseys. Win a single game. That's just
I'm trying to think the Miami always gets weird with the jerseys. What were those Heat jerseys a few years ago? They were like
the Vice City jerseys.
The pink and baby blue. Yeah, those were pretty cool, but just like Miami gets weird with it. I like it.
Yeah, the Miami Hurricanes actually I think did it best. They had and FIU as well, but like they had the black jerseys, just straight black with orange lettering. It was really clean. Dolphins messed up. Anyways, let's go to the next player here. I want to talk about a guy that I want to start this week, and I think that people are starting to lose their faith a little bit. He wasn't like a very risky draft pick when you made it, but Jakobi Meyers, wide receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders, going up against the Chicago Bears this week. Dave, we're just kind of going at each other's throats already, Bears and Dolphins. But hey, Chicago, they're allowing. Yeah, man. I mean, they're allowing the second most fantasy points to wide receivers. We've had 4 wide receivers score at least 14 PPR points or more against the Bears so far this season. Bears don't have their 2 starting cornerbacks. Jalen Johnson looking like he might be having surgery. Kyler Gordon's been a DNP throughout the week. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't play last week either. That leaves Tyreek Stevenson and Nashawn Wright, who Dave, each of them together. Tyreek Stevenson's allowing 104 quarterback rating. Nashawn Wright is allowing a 123.7 quarterback rating when targeted. Both of these guys are allowing more than 14 yards per reception. This is not a good secondary. This is a smash matchup for Jakobi Meyers. If you have any other Raiders receivers that you want to try to throw in there, Trey Tucker, any of these other guys, you can probably get them into your lineup as well. But Jakobi Meyers, he's hit 60 plus receiving yards in every single game. He is the receiver to play from this Vegas Raiders team. He leads the team in targets, team target share, yards, snap count share. This is the guy that if you have him, I'm not holding back. This could be a big blow up game for him. And honestly, I think a lot of other players on this team, Geno Smith, Ashton Jinty, this could actually be a sneaky shootout game.
Yeah, I like Jakobi Meyers a ton. I will pump the brakes a little bit on Trey Tucker. I kind of understand what you're saying, but if there's one strength in this Chicago defense, it is in their
The slot.
safeties. They don't give up
Okay.
the really big plays either. So if Trey Tucker, I mean, that's what he does, is he kind of lives off of these big plays. And with Kevin Byard and Jaquan Brisker back there, that's one of their strong points. So I think that they can get eaten up alive out of the slot by Jakobi Meyers. I'm very aggressive on him in my rankings this week. So yeah, completely in agreement with you on Meyers. I've got a little bit of pause on Trey Tucker though.
Oh yeah, I'm not excited about it, but I'm saying if you went out and you put Fab on Trey Tucker,
Right.
it's probably because you needed him. And I don't think this is the week where you go, you know what? Let me wait a week. Like just throw him out there. You probably needed the guy. All right, let's go to the next start, Dave. Who else are you starting this week?
I'm sticking with the same game that you just talked about here because, as you said, sneaky
Nice.
shootout potential. I'm seeing it as well. DeAndre Swift, it's really weird right now. He is the consensus RB28 this week. And like, I had to look multiple times. Like, am I overlooking something? Like, why is he ranked so lowly? And I can't really figure it out. I've got him as my RB15 on the week, 17th in expected fantasy points per fantasy points. That's a mouthful. Expected fantasy points is a metric by our friends over at fantasypoints.com. And they've got him at 17th in that stat, 18th in touches per game, 14th in targets per game. He's the RB23 in points. And this game has the fourth highest over under the week. So you talk about that sneaky shootout potential. I don't even know if it's that sneaky. Like Vegas sees this as a shootout as well. This just feels like a bounce back game for Swift. We've seen the opportunities, we've seen the touches, just haven't really seen the big plays or the touchdowns. But this is a game where that can happen. So I've got him, as I said, my RB15. I'm starting him ahead of Chase Brown, which might sound crazy, but really tough matchup there going up against Denver. I've got him ahead of Kenneth Walker. I've got him ahead of Breece Hall, who also has a pretty nice matchup. This just feels like a good spot for DeAndre Swift. I know some people have been frustrated with the production, but you got to look at the usage, and it's been there, and it's only a matter of time before the production follows.
Yeah, like I mentioned, this I think is going to be a sneaky shootout game. If everything is on track the way we think it is for the Bears, and Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, he did look like a different quarterback last week, Caleb. Like I will say that. He seemed, not that he doesn't always seem confident, but he seemed to be a lot quicker with his decision making. He wasn't as frantic as we normally see. It almost looked like for once Caleb was comfortable playing in structure.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, like this is a sight that I have like never seen in my life. You know how they always like interview the game-winning quarterback on the field after my game? To
Mhm.
see my quarterback in a clean jersey, that's unheard of. Like
It's crazy.
usually when I see a Bears quarterback after a game, it looks like they've been through war, just like blood and mud and tears, and just like, luckily we were able to squeak that one out. And like he's still got a smile on his face, pristine jersey, 0 sacks, I think is the biggest takeaway. Everyone gets really excited about, the big plays and the touchdowns and all that sort of stuff. But when I see 0 sacks, that gets me very, very, very excited. This interior offensive line that they really invested in is starting to mesh, starting to look really good. So yeah, I've got high hopes for this team going forward.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the easiest thing to allow Caleb to play within structures. Just to have the offensive line working well up front. He's not going to be playing as frantic. That's going to be the key going forward. Looks like it's all working out well. I'm going to go to my next guy here, TreVeyon Henderson, running back for the New England Patriots. And this might feel a little risky for people, but
Hey, I'll tell you, before you even get into it, I just want to say I put him in a lineup this morning. I was setting some of my lineups and put him in over Michael Pittman, and I was just like, this is it. This is the week. So I want to hear what you got to say.
I've got him in my lineups as well. And if you drafted him with this expectation that you were going to be starting him and likely starting him early. Everything has been written. Like this is what the prophecy spoke of. TreVeyon Henderson coming in to be the starting running back after Ramondre Stevenson fumbles the job quite literally away twice last week, going up against Carolina. This is where I think this gets interesting. The Carolina Panthers have the highest neutral passing rate of any team in the NFL. Patriots are also top 10. They're number 10 to be exact, but top 10 sounds better. Henderson's value has always been in the passing game. So even if we don't see 15 carries for TreVeyon Henderson, and maybe we see 8, 9, maybe 10 carries at the most, I think it's likely we end up seeing quite a bit of receptions going through the air. And that's the big thing, is I think there's going to be a lot of passing in this game that we don't normally see. Carolina's allowed at least 12 PPR points to running backs in each game this season. They allowed 9 catches over the last 2 weeks, one of them being Bijan Robinson, but the other being Trey Benson, and that was with James Conner in his full normal role. So this team is susceptible through the air to running backs. It doesn't have to be a high volume game for Henderson. Just get him out in space, get him catching passes, going up against this Carolina secondary who, I mean, JC Horn is a great defender. Don't get me wrong. He's going to have
Not
his
going to be
hands
covering
full.
TreVeyon Henderson.
That's exactly it. He's going to be focusing on the wide receivers. So yeah, give me TreVeyon Henderson in this game.
Yeah, I'm completely with you here. And did you see yesterday in practice? I mean, I don't want to like put too much weight into
I
this.
know. He went first in a drill.
I'm surprised you didn't mention it, but yeah, like people were going like crazy about it. That that's notable. And you talk about the 2 fumbles from Ramondre Stevenson. Antonio Gibson also fumbled in that game. And Alfredo, do you know how many fumbles TreVeyon Henderson had in his entire collegiate career?
0.
Yes. So if we got other running backs here coughing up the football, TreVeyon Henderson, he takes care of the football. Let's hope we can see that change happen. This is why you are patient with running backs. Sometimes it takes, a few weeks of disappointment, but I think this is the week that we can really see him break out.
Season high in touches last week for TreVeyon. And that
Yep.
was with all of us throughout the first half going, why is he not in the game? Surely they have to put him in the game now. With a whole week of preparation, I think we're going to be getting a lot of TreVeyon Henderson this week.
Yep.
Okay, Dave, let's go to the next player on here. Who do you got?
Jordan Addison going up against Pittsburgh. I've got him as my wide receiver 29 on the week, and this one does feel a little bit sketchy, but the Vikings didn't have to throw a lot last week, and they were just throttling the Bengals. They had a 48-10 win, 2 defensive touchdowns. They didn't really have to throw, but if you look at what Carson Wentz did, he played pretty well. Completed 70% of his passes, 2-0 touchdown to interception ratio, 7th in yards per attempt, 8th in EPA per dropback. Like there was a lot of promising signs in what we saw from Carson Wentz. And I know there's always trepidation when starting a player who hasn't played yet, but this isn't a guy coming back from an injury or anything like that. He was suspended and he was playing in the preseason and he looked really good in the preseason. He is a good, talented player. And before his suspension news started, I went back and I looked. 4for4 has this cool ADP tool where you can kind of see where players were getting drafted. He was getting drafted in rounds 4 and 5 before we expected this suspension. So this guy is a starter. Like he would have been drafted to be a starter. Don't let the discount you got on draft day confuse you for him to be some sort of bench player. Like this guy would have been a starter and you got a discount because of the suspension. So I've got him pretty aggressive in my rankings this week, starting him ahead of Marvin Harrison, starting him ahead of DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith. I've got him ranked as a wide receiver 3, which is much higher than his consensus ranking.
I like what you said, where you said, yeah, it seems sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's
the
whole point.
Ireland, the travel is what it is really sketchy. Like we always see these games end up being a little bit disappointing when they fly overseas.
It can be, yes. And it's funny because the next 2 players I'm going to talk about are also from this game as well, the Minnesota-Pittsburgh game. This is one where I think it's not going to necessarily be something where we could see a high volume of plays, but I think there are going to be pieces that you can take out of this, and especially with Addison coming back from his suspension, I think this is something where the team's going to want to get him involved quickly and early and get him playing. And once again, it goes back to you drafted these players for a reason. Pittsburgh also, not great. That leads me into my player, TJ Hockenson, tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. And so this is what's interesting for me is that I know that I'm going to talk about it later, is that the Minnesota Vikings are actually dead last in pass attempts per game. And this is not a team that you're going to see a high volume of pass attempts, especially in this game with Pittsburgh. And I'll get more into that when I talk about a player that I want to sit from this game. For me, the whole thing is that Carson Wentz loves the tight end. And we saw it immediately in his first start last week. However you think TJ Hockenson looked, a 30% target rate is not something for us to ignore, especially given the landscape of what the tight end position looks like in fantasy football. So for me, Hockenson doesn't even need volume. He just simply needs efficiency. And with the Steelers giving up the second most points to tight ends in a game here where, I mean, like we mentioned, Dave, they're traveling. There's going to be Probably a lot of them just trying to run the ball, take things slow, and then a few big time explosive plays to a couple of players. The guys who I think actually fit that, I know Justin Jefferson obviously, but Jordan Addison fits that mold of making, 3 catches for 96 yards, and TJ Hockenson touchdown on a couple of catches. This doesn't have to be a big time volume performance for either of these guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's good to see life from TJ Hockenson and also kind of lump Mark Andrews in this discussion. The first 2 weeks were terrible. Like people were talking about dropping them, and I just kept trying to like hope that these guys would bounce back, and we saw it last week. So I'm with you here. I think that TJ Hockenson, he's just that target magnet that works across the middle. You talk about the efficiency. I think that can be offset by volume a little bit, and that's kind of what we've seen. He was a very efficient, low volume player when he was in Detroit. Now he's been kind of a less efficient volume play since joining Minnesota. I think this game though, we always see like the disappointing overseas games, but this game, I think there is some sneaky shootout here, just with the way that Aaron Rodgers plays. Like he is very good against the blitz, even in his age. Like it's not something where he's moving around in the pocket. He's just really good at the short passes. He's going to be playing out of shotgun. He's going to be throwing these short passes to get over the blitz concepts that they're throwing at him. So I think this game does have some shootout potential here. I'm firing up a lot of guys in this game this weekend.
Let's go to you gave me 3 starts, right? Let's go to our sits.
Yeah. All right.
Who are you sitting this week?
This is a big name that I'm sitting this week. T. Higgins. I've got him as my wide receiver 39, meaning he's outside of the top 36, meaning he's benchable.
39 outside of top 36.
Well, top 36, you figure that's like a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3. So, I mean, like, he's on that bubble, and if you don't have a better option, you need to go back to T. Higgins. I understand it, but this is also me just saying, like, hey, if you're frustrated by T. Higgins' production so far, it's okay to sit him this week. Like, yeah, you drafted this guy in round 2 or round 3 and probably thought he'd be a starter, but things change quickly. This Broncos defense scares me. Jake Browning as a quarterback scares me. The Broncos are 8th best in points allowed to wide receivers, but they've gone up against 2 very good offenses so far in the Colts and the Chargers, and still have been pretty good against wide receivers. And last week, TJ Hockenson, just 2 points. On the season, he's the wide receiver 57. I hate to say it, but like he is very much so a touchdown or bust wide receiver 4 right now. So, we saw last week against a tough Minnesota team, the Bengals really struggled. Now they get to face a tough Denver defense, and I don't think that this is a get right game for them. So, some guys that I've got ahead of TJ or ahead of T. Higgins in my rankings: Jalen Waddle, Matthew Golden, Khalil Shakir, DJ Moore, a lot of guys that you probably weren't thinking about putting in your lineup ahead of T. Higgins when you drafted him a couple of weeks ago, but that's where I'm at this point.
Yeah, the T. Higgins train is I don't think it's leaving the station. I think it's busted at this point. And it's not a thing with T. It's just his skill set has not translated well with Jake Browning. It did not work well in previous stints with Jake Browning.
Right.
And that's the big thing going forward here. Dave, I mentioned that I was going to talk more about this Pittsburgh, Minnesota game and the guy that I'm sitting from this, because I'm going to be of the opposite mindset here. I don't see a sneaky shootout. I see a game that's going to be very boring, but I see a game that's going to have a few big plays here and there. And it's about picking who can make those plays. Maybe this does work out for him, but I'm going to sit DK Metcalf going up against the Vikings this week. The last couple weeks, I know we've seen touchdowns for DK Metcalf this season, but he's combined for just 6 catches and 52 yards over the last 2 weeks. It has not been good. He actually hasn't been a top 24 wide receiver in any game this season. Minnesota already allows the fewest points to wide receivers in fantasy football. And then on top of that, the reason I'm not expecting a shootout here is the incredibly slow rate of play. Both teams are bottom 5 in plays per game. Vikings have the least amount of plays per game and the lowest amount of pass attempts in the league. Steelers are 28th in plays per game and 25th in pass attempts. Throw in a good defense like Minnesota, I don't see this going well really for either team. I'm trying to pick and choose where I can find someone to start from this game. That's why I did lean into Hockenson. I think Addison is a nice one as well. DK Metcalf really worries me. Like you're hoping, you're begging for a touchdown, and I don't know that you're going to get that continuously week after week. I think I'd actually probably be trying to sell DK Metcalf like immediately off of that touchdown he had last week.
Yeah, and I think that, I talk about like the way to beat the blitz is with the short passes where you're throwing directly over a blitzer, and that's not what DK Metcalf is going to be. So I look at the
Right.
low A dot guys in this offense that I'm getting not excited about starting them, but I think that this can be the bailout options for Aaron Rodgers, Pat Fryermuth, Jonnu Smith, Kenneth Gainwell, Jalen Warren. I think they're going to see a lot of the targets is just the hot reads getting around the blitz where DK Metcalf running his routes a little bit further downfield. I don't have a lot of hope for DK Metcalf. I don't have a lot of hope for Calvin Austin. I think we're going to see the tight ends and the running backs really heavily utilized in this matchup. So I'm with you on
Yep.
that. I've got DK Metcalf a couple ticks ahead of T Higgins. So I've got him as my wide receiver 31, which
Yep.
very much so, kind of in that borderline benchable area. What would you say, T Higgins or DK Metcalf? Who are you starting between those two? If you had to choose,
If
because
I have to choose,
I'm
yeah,
sure
I'll
there's
go
somebody
D.
looking at that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, if I have to choose, I'm going to go DK Metcalf over T Higgins. Um, but man, if I have three wide receiver options that are better than DK Metcalf, I don't want to have to start him. I don't want to have to flex him.
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
I've got
trying to hope and pray for touchdown.
Jordan Addison, the guy that I talked about as, kind of not like a smash spot start, but like a, somebody that I'm a little bit higher on than consensus. I've got
Yep.
Addison ahead of DK and T Higgins.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I can put them around in the same area. I think that there's similar upside for Addison and Metcalf. Um, there's the mystery box factor with Addison. What are they going to do with his first game back with
Right.
Wentz?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
good could that offense be?
I mean, Wentz does
Uh,
have a big arm, and that's where Jordan Addison likes to operate is deep downfield. So we can see a big play here. I mean, that's Jordan Addison has very much so been a big play merchant throughout his career, and hoping that can pick up right where he left off in this one.
yeah. All right, let's go down to our sleepers of the week or streamer, whatever we want to call this. But
Yeah.
Dave, who are you streaming or sleeping this week? I don't know. I couldn't think of a better term there.
It's funny, like so many of the guys that we've talked about recently on the show, Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, and the guy I'm going to talk about right now are like lumped together super close in my rankings. But a lot of this has to do with like draft day expectations. And the reality is
Mm,
like a lot of the guys that we drafted early are falling in rankings. Christian Kirk was like a very late round pick. He was going like round 14, round 15, round 16. If you drafted right before kickoff when he was already dealing with an injury, we knew he was going to miss some time. He fell even further than that. And I think a lot of people are going to see the production from last week and say, like, no, I'm not starting Christian Kirk. He had 3 catches for 25 yards. That's terrible.
right.
But he had 8 targets in that game. He led the team in slot snaps. He was second in routes run only to Nico Collins, and he was targeted on 28% of his routes. That right now is the 11th highest rate in the NFL. And I know it's a 1 game sample, but like when he was out there, he was getting heavily targeted. They were getting mauled by Jacksonville. Like this offense did not look good against this defensive front. And Tennessee's defense is pretty good as well. But I think it's going to be a lot of those short, quick throws. We saw a lot of screens and slants getting drawn up for Christian Kirk out of the slot. I think we're going to see a lot of that as well. The fear here, of course, is that CJ Stroud just looks bad. I shared a clip on Twitter this morning where, like, Christian Kirk had what could have been like a 40-yard touchdown and, just ran a deep out route into zone coverage. And, like, he was wide open on an island. And CJ Stroud stared him down from, like, the first step in his route, stared him all 20 yards down on his route, and then short armed it into his zone defense where it just, like, hit a defender, like, easiest interception that defender's ever going to have in his life. So, there is some concern about CJ Stroud because he does not look good at all, but the usage has been there, and that gets me excited. So I've got Christian Kirk ahead of T. Higgins, who I talked about. I've got him ahead of Calvin Ridley, who has really been struggling. Travis Hunter, who has also really been struggling. I've got Christian Kirk up in the wide receiver, that same wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 bubble that we were talking about. But I have a little bit more faith in him than a lot of guys that you drafted way ahead of him this week.
It's funny. You and I keep looking at the same games, and these are not your traditional, players that, yes, they're surefire starts. That's the whole point of this show. What we're doing is trying to help people that maybe these guys are on the bubble for you. You're thinking
Right,
about them, right?
right.
And for me, I'm going to stick in that same Tennessee-Houston game. I'm going to go with Elic Ayomanor going up against Houston, who, I mean, Titans are 7th in pass rate last week, hit a season high in passing, where they had their their highest pass rate of the season. A lot of that was them trailing and needing to pass, which could also happen once again this week. I know CJ Stroud hasn't looked good, but this Texans defense is still good, and the Texans can still put up some points. So Ayomanor's had 18 targets across his first 3 games. He's got a higher target per route run than Calvin Ridley, higher catch rate than Calvin Ridley, higher yards per target than Calvin Ridley, higher yards per route run than Calvin Ridley. Everything is better right now than Calvin Ridley, except for the number of receptions. And it's crazy because like he's not getting used as much. And I think that's the thing that people might push back on, is that we're not seeing the same usage for Ayomanor being out there as often, running as many routes. But the efficiency metrics for Ayomanor has been way better. And all of the teams receiving touchdowns have gone to Ayomanor. 2 for 2. He leads the team in end zone targets and has the only 2 passing touchdowns from Cam Ward this year. Likely no Derek Stingley in this game for Houston, as he's got an oblique injury. And even if he does play, he's going to be the one that's shadowing Calvin Ridley to try to eliminate big plays and take away the first read from Cam Ward. So Ayomanor for me, guy that I think you can put in your flex spot this week.
Yeah, we talked a lot during like the draft cycle, the whole draft process about how like what this draft class really lacked in high-end talent. There weren't like superstars coming in this year, but we kept talking about like the depth that like teams are going to be able to find starters on day 3. And like how many of the rookies that we're talking about right now that are really buzzing were not the highly drafted guys. Like Ashton Jinty has looked kind of disappointing. Travis Hunter has been kind of disappointing. Mason Taylor hasn't really done that much. But meanwhile, we got like Cam Scadaboo and Bashal Tootin and Elic Ayomanor and Torrey Horton and a lot of these day 3 guys really kind of carving out a role quickly. So yeah, we talked about that a lot, and I'm glad to see that it's coming to fruition now. Ayomanor was a day 3 guy, had some health concerns. It was a knee injury, I believe, right? I want to say like 2021, 2022. He had a really bad knee injury that took him some time to come back from, but he looks good now. And Calvin Ridley just does not can't separate, can't catch. And I think it's only a matter of time before Ayomanor becomes that wide receiver one. I don't even know if I could say a matter of time. Like it might have already happened. Like he looks like the better receiver right here. So yeah, Ayomanor, excited for him and want to see Cam Ward start winning some games because he's looked much better than his box score has implied. And I think it's only a matter of time before Tennessee starts putting it together.
Yeah, I mean, Ayomanor had a few other things in college that, like he wasn't always the fastest guy on film, but then the combine or the testing put that away. He had a lot of like really simple drops. There was things where you were wondering what he could do. He hasn't shown a lot of those same weaknesses here in the NFL. And so there's a chance like he could end up being the wide receiver one very quickly for this team.
I still remember the first note I took on Ayomanor. I try to watch a dozen routes before I put anything in there. And I said, this guy doesn't look fast, but somehow he's always open. And I think it's just like the way that he moves. Like he's a strider where he takes really long steps. So he doesn't have super quick feet, but he's just very graceful with his movements and somehow just continuously gets open. And even when he doesn't get open, he's got great ball tracking skills and can make those really high point catches. So a very fun player. Excited to see what he can do. And yeah, I'm with you. I've got him well in the starter range this week.
Well, there you have it. Dave, we did 6 starts, 2 sits, 2 sleepers/streamers. It's becoming a very easy transactional show for the audience here. I hope that we were able to help some people with their decisions this week. As always, you guys can check out the Football Guys rankings over on footballguys.com, where it has my rankings, Dave's rankings, and everyone else on staff. We've got our projections there as well. So make sure you're checking that out. Dave,
I just want to say
for week 4.
You left out the best part about our rankings is that they're completely customizable to your league settings. We put a lot of work into rebuilding this whole rankings platform out a few years ago. So, we talk about our rankings and we're talking about 12 team half PPR rankings. But once you get into the Football Guys rankings platform, you can adjust for league size, how many roster spots you have, how many bench spots you have, how many wide receiver spots, the scoring, every single thing that you can customize. And then that is tied to our back end projection. So it'll actually change our rankings specifically for your league. Yeah, I think you undersold a little bit. I don't know any other platforms that are doing that out there.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. A true company man. I've got to put it out there.
I don't want to get in trouble.
It was funny. We just saw an email because Joe sends our emails out all the time. And in the email, he said fully customizable rankings to your league settings. And then somebody responded and goes, wow, I just clicked that link and I didn't realize that these were fully customizable to your league settings. No matter how much we say it, people are going to miss it.
Welcome to 2025, everybody. We've got great technology over here.
Yep.
Well, Dave, you and I are going to be back again on Monday with the week 5 waiver wire pickups to make. As always, we've got the Wednesday Flex Show, and we'll be back again with our start, sits, and sleepers for next week. So make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you want to enjoy this show, because we're going to be back with you every single week. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.